Welcome to Changing Higher Ed, a podcast dedicated to helping higher education leaders improve their institutions. My name is Dr. Drum McNaughton, and I'm the CEO of The Change Leader, a management consultancy that helps university leaders create sustainable higher ed institutions through holistic approaches to strategic management, university academics and operations, change management, leadership, and governance. Our podcast brings you the latest in higher ed news, as well as some of the top experts in our profession who will share with you their perspectives on how you can grow your institution. Russ Poulin is a Senior Director of Policy Analysis and Strategic Alliances for WCET, the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education's Center for Education Technology. Russ's responsibilities include organizing WCET's national policy and research activities, coordinating their research efforts, and working on e-learning consortia issues. Russ has a long history in distance and online education, having coordinated distant education activities for North Dakota's university system before joining WCET. And he recently represented the distant education community in the U.S. Department of Education's 2014 and 2019 negotiated rulemaking process. Russ, welcome to the show.
Oh, great to be on with you.
Yeah, well, it's been looking forward to this very much. Technology is changing so much right now, and what you guys do up there at WCET and WICHE, you're doing some fabulous things in helping the states and many of the state institutions move forward into a new paradigm. Can you tell me just a little bit about what you guys do up there?
I will. And so our parent organization, WICHE, the Western Interstate Commission for Higher Education, looks at student access and policy and research issues among the Western states. And then we, as WCET, the WICHE Cooperative for Educational Technologies, focus on the use of technologies in higher education, whether on campus or off, and have a history in distance education. And we look at not only at the technologies, but actually the most important part is about how do faculty and students use those technologies and use them well. And I'm big on the policy area in terms of working with federal and state policies about those. And one of the big things we do is sharing among the members about what works and what doesn't work, so we're not reinventing the wheel as we're trying to take these innovations and use them.
And that makes so much sense. And you've got a great background for that, having represented the distance education community for the 2014 NEGREG, the negotiated rulemaking process.
Yes, the negotiated rulemaking is a arcane little thing, and it was good to be able to help out in trying to work on federal rules around distance education.
And I think that's still undergoing right now. That the new NEGREG for 2019 is going to be Accreditation and Innovation, and one of the sub areas is distance education, or online. So it's going to continue.
It is, and I've been nominated to be on that subcommittee. So hope to hear very soon about being on that.
Well, that'll be great. Let's do a little context. Online education, distance education has grown tremendously. I mean, I've seen huge numbers out there. What have you been seeing? And I think you get your numbers from the Department of Education, don't you?
Yes. The Department of Education puts out numbers from an annual survey of fall enrollments. And what they've been showing is that over the last, 6-7 years, that higher education enrollments overall within the U.S. Have been going down a percentage point or two pretty much each year. Meanwhile, the distance education enrollment, so this is of students who take all of their courses online in a fall term where they do their census. They have now grown to where that is about 15-16% of all students take their courses online. So that's about 1 in 6, 1 in 7. That's a little bit bigger than I think most people would think, because a lot of people still think it's way off on the edges. And then when you include those students who took at least one course online, that's another 15, 16, 17%. And that's growing by quite a bit over the last several years. So you're having just in that one term in which they took the census on this, that you have over a third of the students were involved in at least one online course, if not all of the courses.
And I think that's numbers just going to continue to grow, especially as the younger generations, the millennial and the Gen Z, start to come into the college age or go back to school. I can't see that number decreasing at all. In fact, I think it'll probably double in the next 10 years.
Yeah, and a lot of that's going to come from the K-12 experience where they are starting to use more online courses, and especially with what's called dual or concurrent enrollment, where high school students are taking college courses while they're still in high school. A lot of those are at a distance. And so they'll come in with that experience already, and we'll expect that the institution will have that as an option for at least some courses, if not the entire program.
I think you're absolutely right. We've also seen a crowded marketplace out there. We're seeing a lot of mergers, acquisitions, and more universities going out of business. I think that's going to impact how students enroll as well, don't you think?
Yeah, and the market has really shifted as well, because what we saw was that really it was for-profits. That there were those who thought for-profits were the entire market, but they were a good percentage of the market. And over the last few years, that their enrollments have really tumbled for quite a number of reasons that has happened. And then meanwhile, both public institutions and especially the not-for-profit private institutions have really grown in terms of their enrollments. And so every once in a while, we'll see some interesting things where there's one state in particular where the legislature got involved and said, oh, we'll just create this new online entity and we'll have tens of thousands of students within just a couple of years. And what they ran into is exactly what you're saying, is that, wait a second, there's already a fairly crowded market. There are more institutions get involved in it. There are some other large institutions who have become very large because of it in the last few years. That you think of Western Governors Universities now over 100,000, and they're completely online. Southern New Hampshire University is approaching 100,000, if I remember right, and that they have a large online component. And Arizona State University is another one where they're probably in another 5-6 years they could have it's a large institution already, and about half of their enrollments could be online. So you have some of these big players who are coming in, and they're becoming national rather than regional.
And Liberty University the same way.
Liberty, yes, yeah. How could I forget them? That they've really grown.
Yeah, University of Maryland, University Campus. There's some huge players out there, but yet at the same time, we're seeing consolidation with Purdue acquiring Kaplan, Strayer, Capella merger, and even National University acquiring North Central. So there's multiple things that are going on in the marketplace. I'd love to talk about those, but let's talk about some of the technologies that are out there and how things are changing and have changed. And if we were advising presidents of universities, who many of our listeners are presidents, they want to know what's going on and what they can do about it to make sure that their university stays sustainable. So, let's go down the list. Maybe start with OPM, Online Program Management. Oh,
okay. And so what that is that an OPM will allow an institution to outsource some of its operations to a company that has these skills. It may range from marketing, might be something that they may help you to get your programs online. They may help with instructional design. They may help you work with faculty. There's just a variety of activities that, depending on the OPM, that they can help you with. So it's up to the institution to figure out, okay, where are we weak? Where are we not doing well? And how can we get this assistance from a company that has some really good expertise in this area? Now, with those, like anything when you're outsourcing, that there are good experiences to point to and bad experiences to point to with those. And so there are some where people have really outsourced too much, and it's caused concern among not only your local faculty, but also accreditors and regulators about, are you really just selling your name? And there is some worry about that, and actually who's in control. And on that side, on the other side, that the positive side is that there's a lot of institutions that aren't that great at marketing to populations that they haven't marketed to before. So if you're putting a new online program, that's probably going to an adult market that your institution maybe has not targeted in the past, and that these OPMs can do a really good job of helping you get those leads, helping you get people into your program. So it's really something that we're seeing great growth in terms of institutions using these companies. But again, use it with caution and go into any sort of agreement with your eyes wide open.
Oh, absolutely. As you need to with any contractual arrangement. I can see the challenges coming from the accreditation perspective and even faculty with shared governance. Most, especially regional accreditors, require shared governance with respect to faculty owning the curriculum. And if, in fact, the OPM is owning the curriculum, that could create some consternation on the part of your accreditor.
Yeah, and we've seen that in some places where they start to expand a curriculum or create a new one, and that they haven't really worked with the local faculty, and that has had some bad outcomes with that. So you need to keep that in mind. How do you fit into the faculty and faculty culture and faculty roles? But also, I remember when my friends went into one of the institutions and found out that their contract was against state law. Oh my! Yeah, that was so she was able to get out of that, and so you do have to keep those things in line.
The other big challenge with that is something that we all know very, very intimately. Is called resistance to change.
Yeah. Well, there is that, and really that you only need to bring along the faculty that you need to bring along, and that probably at every institution that you'll have a group that are willing, that they want to get in there and be part of it, and there are those that either they don't want to, or they're not ready for it, or they haven't seen it, or they'll be convinced once somebody else is successful. So that's always an iterative process in terms of trying to bring people in. I know that my previous life, I was in North Dakota working on distance ed, and had an institution that just hated what we were doing with distance ed. And then when they figured out, it was a small institution that was struggling with enrollments, when they figured out they could increase enrollments and hire more faculty, they thought it was a really good thing, because the same people suddenly turned around and thought, oh, this is actually to my benefit.
Yes. And one of the things that I recently read, one of the online programs had some great student outcome numbers, and that's what they used to convince faculty that this was actually meaningful. One of the minor aspects of OPM is OER, the outsourced educational resources. Little bit different, but we're seeing an awful lot of players moving into this area.
Yeah, and so OER, so open educational resources, and what that's about is that we've seen the great increases in what a student has to pay to go to higher education over the last several years, and part of that has been textbook prices. And if you look at, there's certain research out there that shows that above any other consumer good, that textbooks have gone up in price more than anything else that you can think of over the last decade or two. And so I've just seen some charts on that. And so what happens is that that's yet another barrier for students to go to school, and that there are quite a number of groups that are working on how do we create open textbooks that are available online, that they're created by groups of faculty working together, and then make it so that it's free or relatively low cost to students. And so instead of a student having to pay several $100s for a textbook that they only use one chapter out of, that they're using these open resources that are out there, and then getting faculty to adopt those is always an interesting thing. But a lot of them are really seeing that they're hearing the struggles of their students. They're very interested in the greater control that they have over what the materials are in their online textbooks, if you will, out there. And so there's a lot of advantages beyond just the cost in this, including for distance ed students, that the students have their textbooks the first day or before the first day of the class, which is not always the case if you have to mail textbooks out.
That makes perfect sense. I remember one university for which I taught years ago, we used to be able to get customized texts, which would be chapters out of different reference books that we wanted. This seems like it's taking it to a whole new level.
Yeah, it really is. Again, there's been a lot of groups that have been working on this, and that we're to the point where there's a lot of institutions have done it, and that they have knowledge about how to make it work and such. And then we were able to receive, WCET was able to receive a grant from the William and Flora Hewlett Foundation to try to figure out, okay, how do we take those lessons and work with states or systems of institutions and try to expand this out to figure out, what are the policies? What are the faculty support issues? How do we work with the libraries? How do we work with the bookstores? How do we make this so that we can expand adoption of these? And so that's something that we're working on, is that let's take these lessons learned from all these 1,000 flowers, million flowers growing separately, and put it into something that we can make sustainable and grow it out.
Which makes perfect sense. But then the opposite side of that is, from a marketing and branding perspective, if you have faculty who are world class teaching classes, they're going to want to use their own book. And this is one of the ways a college differentiates themselves, is instead of using OER, they're saying, yes, we have world class faculty, including XYZ, who specializes in ABC. So it's a challenge in that respect.
Yeah, there's a lot of challenges in terms of adoption, and we saw, I won't call out the state, but there's one state where a well-meaning legislator wanted to require that everything be open. There's nothing you do like to get faculty riled than to require them to do anything. So, and rightfully so. And rightfully so. So it was not a good thing. So part of this has to be respect for the faculty and their role in terms of choosing the resources that they're going to use, but getting them to understand that there are options out there and the impact of those options on their students.
Absolutely. As the old saying goes, people support what they help create.
Yes.
There's some other interesting things that are coming down the line here that we spoke about earlier. Adaptive learning, virtual reality learning. What are those about?
A bit about adaptive learning. That what this is using essentially a computer program and great software. And what it does is that you get into the learning, and that as you're going along, that there are little tests or quizzes along the way. And then as you're figuring out, it'll say, you really aren't figuring out fractions very well. So we're going to send you back and do this little reminder section where you can figure that out so that you're able to progress. Or on the other hand, that somebody may be doing very well and it progresses that student along more at their own pace, and so that they can skip over maybe some modules because they're able to figure that out. It is something that we're seeing some places that are using this where they're getting pretty great outcomes in terms of the students are getting the help that they need, and they're not spending time on things that they don't need. And think about your college career. There were times I can remember where I had to take a course over again. I was trying to figure out why. I already know all this stuff, but was not the same title, so I had to take it again. So that there are ways where you can work with that. And then for some of these too, that I'm thinking about some of these adaptive learning places where there has to be the human element to it as well. And so you're not just saddling a student with a computer, that there are points where either the computer will raise the hand for the student and say, oh, okay, this person needs a little more personal help, or the student can raise their hand, have a way where they can say, I'm just not getting this. And so they'll be able to talk to a tutor, be able to talk to faculty, and that they have a variety of ways where either one-on-one, or they'll say, come in, we're going to have a seminar on this next Wednesday. Then there's other students who are struggling with this. We'll do something face-to-face. So using the technology and the people in the appropriate amount to further learning.
Well, it sounds like artificial intelligence meets formative assessment and CVE.
Yes. It's all of those things being put together. And it's interesting. So Mike Abbiati, who's my boss and a former colonel in the services, said, well, the services have been using these sorts of things for years. And it's finally K-12 education and higher education are finally catching up and saying, there are places where that sort of experience actually works out well for students. It's maybe not for every student, but neither is the sitting in the classroom for every student.
Absolutely, which kind of brings us to the next area, local centers for support. We're starting to see more institutions having, quote, branch campuses where students can go in and speak with somebody if they're having challenges with online education.
Yeah, this is really very, very new in terms of hearing about institutions that are thinking about doing that. And it makes a lot of sense because they probably at first got the students who were fine with being online, or they had no other choice but to take the classes fully online and doing that. But as you want to provide more help and then beyond the academics, that a lot of times there's student assistance or doing the proctoring for tests and all these things, that having centers where a student could go to and get some help would make some sense. And so we're seeing the University of Phoenix has had their locations all over, and they've actually pulled back on some of those. But we're seeing Georgia Tech and maybe I think Southern New Hampshire and some others talking about putting those in. And I'm thinking of the local malls here. I'm in Colorado. That a couple things that you've got the Apple store where the Apple folks figured out, we need the local help, and then also Amazon in one of the other malls. They ran out the Barnes and Noble bookstore is there, and now they're putting in an Amazon bookstore. They're figuring out that one of the ways to expand their market is to some people still want that in-person, very hands-on experience, and they're providing that help in that way.
Yeah, our son is a millennial, and frankly, he doesn't go to the store other than the grocery store. He orders everything online.
Yeah, and for those that they can do that, but they're still those of us who are slightly older than that, who being able to go talk to somebody every once in a while just makes me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, and frankly, from my perspective, because I have conversations with folks all over the world. In fact, speaking with Vietnam a couple of days ago, I don't understand why they're not having office hours for online education using Zoom or Skype or whatever the platform is. But I just haven't seen that catch on at too many online institutions.
Yeah, there are some that do it very well. And actually what we're seeing, and this goes back to what we were talking about with the business models and some of the larger institutions, that for those that are larger, that they are doing these sorts of things. I'm thinking about with Southern New Hampshire and some of the others that are doing this well. We haven't brought up Embry-Riddle, which is a very aviation-focused institution, has gone from being almost exclusively face-to-face to where they may be past half of their students are at a distance, and that they've done a lot with virtual reality in terms of trying to figure that out, that they're trying to figure out different ways to connect with their students and give them a more connected experience and work things out. So what's happening is that some of these larger institutions are investing in these. If the institutions who are doing this more on the side are not investing or investigating what can be done to better support students both academically and with other student support services, the word's going to get out and they're going to be left behind, I fear.
Yes. And, in aviation, I was a pilot in the Navy for many years, and we used simulators all the time.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
In fact, one check ride I took for my ATP, my airline transport pilot rating, I took it completely in the simulator. And it's amazing that the technology, and this was back almost 30 years ago, it's amazing how far that technology has come.
Oh, yes. And it's still in its infancy, but there's just, I'm hearing more and more professions that are starting to use that and figuring it out. And I know we had one of our institutions that won an award from us because in the health profession that a student could try out a medical procedure and try it several times in a virtual setting, whereas if you tried to do that with a real person and you weren't quite right, you'd be hurting the person. So you could be graded in this virtual world.
Oh, absolutely. So we're getting close to the end of our time. I had one more topic to just briefly touch on, LMSs.
So the LMS, Learning Management System, that's for a lot of the online programs, that's where they keep the information for a course. So somebody will log into their course and they can see the syllabus and all the resources, and that all the discussions are held there for the course, videos, whatever is available for the course, those are out there. And what we've seen quite a shakeup in that industry in the last few years, where certainly the company Canvas has, or Instructure, which makes the Canvas product, I should say, has really captured a larger and larger share each year of the market. Now, there are other really great products out there, but it's interesting to see that some of the other companies that they're putting as much focus on some of the side services that they were offering as they were just on the LMS product. So they're providing things in terms of becoming an OPM, looking much broader in terms of overall support for the institution, and then the LMS is just now sort of a side business. It'll be interesting to see, too, that as institutions get more and more sophisticated, that LMS is still pretty confining for a lot of faculty, to see if in the future, that we'll see something that gives them a little bit more freedom than they have right now.
I think you're absolutely right. Of course, we don't have time to go into cloud, but, the cloud has changed everything, which, maybe that's a subject for another podcast.
Yeah, that really would be, because that certainly does make sense for a couple of reasons in terms of the ability of these providers, whether it's the LMS or any other software provider, to be able to provide the software anywhere. And then also to, if anything happens to your institution, like we had some recent earthquakes in Alaska, or that you have fires in California, that you're able to maintain operations even if things go wrong. And so you're able to keep the institution going with online courses because all of your software and courses are maintained someplace else.
And there's just so many other things, the convergence of technologies right now that are impacting what's going on in the cloud.
It's an exciting, there's always something new every day, which is why this is such a fun position to be in.
Absolutely. As a quick wrap up, if you were going to talk to a university president who is considering bringing on online distance education, what would the three things that you would say to him or her?
Well, I would really start with making sure that they have a good idea of where they want to be. What is their goal? What is their mission? Are there certain programs that they want to make sure that they get out there? And having some idea around that really overrides most everything else, because a lot of times that I see institutions get into it, well, we're just going to put things online. Well, we need some direction on this. Second is that once you have that, and these two might go together, is starting to look at what we were talking about before, the crowded marketplace. And you may decide that you really, really want to do your MBA, but when you find out that you're the 389th MBA being offered in the U.S. and in Canada, or whatever the number is that, do you really have a market, and how do you differentiate yourself in that market? And so you may change based upon your market analysis. You may want to do that. I'm just amazed at the number of institutions who get into distance ed and just throw things up there without any idea about who they're marketing to or how they fit in with the existing market that's out there. Finally is really making sure that you get some people dedicated to all these things, to making sure that it happens and happens well. And you'll need somebody who's a chief online officer, chief learning officer, whatever you call it for your institution, who has the institution's goals in mind and is looking out for the institution. And then from there, you figure out, am I going to use an OPM? Am I going to build it internally? How am I going to? So we've now set the goals. We've now set the market. How do we then achieve those things? And you have somebody who's looking at the options and how to make those go.
Great advice for presidents. Thank you.
Excellent. Yes. Yeah, this has been so much fun.
Yeah. And so what's next for Russ?
Well, what's next for us? Well, you mentioned the negotiated rulemaking. That is coming up in January, February, and March of 2019. There are just so many issues that have to do with education innovations, and I think that there's an interest in trying to make sure that federal financial aid is available for those who are using distance education, competency-based education, adaptive learning, or any other sort of innovations that are coming down the pike. And so we really want to watch what's happening with that. And you'd mentioned accreditation as part of that as well. I think that decisions will come out of this rulemaking that will impact every single higher ed person working in higher ed as those start to get implemented. We better be watching. We better be vocal in making sure that things really, really work out for the benefit of students.
Absolutely. And as long as we keep that in mind for the benefit of students and also for those organizations who hire our graduates, I think we'll be.
Yes.
Well, Russ, thank you so much. It's been wonderful to have you on the show. Thanks for listening this week. And a special thank you to this week's special guest, Russ Poulin of WCET, who spoke to us about new ways to introduce and innovate at your institution via distance learning. Our next guest is Rob Showers of the firm Sim Showers, LLP. Rob is a specialist in many areas of the law, but he's especially great at Title IX, and he'll be talking to us about the new changes that have come out of the Department of Education and how they will affect you and your institution. You don't want to miss this one, folks. If you like this podcast, please take a minute to subscribe to the show. And if you're listening on the Apple Podcast app, would you please take a moment to give us a rating and review? You can find out more information and show notes at changinghighered.com. And if you have guests and/or other topics you'd like to hear about, please email us at podcast@changinghighered.com to let us know. Remember, creating sustainable higher ed institutions requires 3 things: taking a holistic view of your institution, aligning strategies, structures, and processes, and ensuring stakeholders are attuned to where you're going. Without any of those 3 things, you won't get your institution where you want it to go. Until next time.